As you are looking to scale as an investor in multifamily, you need to make sure you're doing two things. One, surrounding yourself with the right people. Two, understanding what you can and can't do in the markets you're going to invest in. Today, we sit down with Athena Brownson, and she shares why it's so important to understand your local market and all the laws that are governing residential and commercial multifamily, but also why it's important to be resilient and to have the right people on your team. If you want to know how to scale your portfolio leveraging the right minds, make sure you check out today's conversation right here on Multifamily Insights. When you think you found a great deal, asking the right questions could be the difference in finding a stud or a dud. Listen, we've put together a new guide to help you out. It's called 7 Questions You Must Ask Before Investing in Apartments. Now, in this guide, you're going to learn how to uncover red flags, quickly identify underwriting risk, vet sponsors and team members, and confirm key assumptions. Now, this is a guide that's going to help you be a better investor, whether you're an active investor or you're a passive investor looking to partner with other operators. Asking better questions is the key to identifying great opportunities. So download this free guide. Go to our website, casmoncapital.com/7 questions. That's the number 7 questions. And you can access this free guide today. To make it easy on you, though, we've put a link in our show notes. So you go to the show notes, you can click that link and access the guide right now. This guide's going to help you make better investment choices, asking the right questions to build your portfolio. So be sure to download it today. Athena Brownson is redefining what it means to thrive in real estate. Now, as a former professional skier who endured 9 knee surgeries and 2 neck operations, Athena's initial impression of real estate was far from positive, viewing realtors as a dime a dozen salespeople, but a life-changing mentorship and her own unstoppable drive transformed that skepticism into passion. Let's welcome to the show, Athena Brownson.
John, thank you so much for having me. That was an amazing intro. I think I'll drop the mic and we're done.
Well, hey,
just kidding. I've got more.
I hope you got some more. Listen, you've got a crazy story. Sounds like you've overcome some things in your life. But I went over that at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
2 minutes, I will do my best. I like to say, cats have 9 lives and I've almost used all of them up. But I grew up in a small mountain community called Breckenridge, Colorado. For those of you who ski, snowboard, you probably know of it. My dad was a professional skier and a real estate developer. So I, of course, grew up on the mountain because he was a professional skier. I was skiing at the age of 2. By the time I was like 5, I was in with very competitive coaches, and I went pro at skiing when I was 15. So I skied professionally for a little over 10 years. Like you said, I had a lot of injuries during that 10-year, actually probably 12-year professional career, and decided I needed to hang up the ski boots and find something that was a little less impact. Now, that certainly isn't real estate because real estate is very high impact. But I went into the field of interior design, and I grew up watching my dad create these beautiful properties in Breckenridge. He was a primarily luxury developer, but he would do about 20 to 40 units at a time. So I grew up walking job sites, and because of that, I really thought that real estate was just being cold on job sites, hating life. And with more real estate offices in Breckenridge than t-shirt shops, I really did think realtors were horny used car salesmen that were a dime a dozen. So I didn't have a great impression of it. But I loved homes and I loved design, and I was very passionate about that. So I thought interior design was the perfect fit for me. Well, it turns out coming from being a professional athlete to working for someone was not the right fit. I needed to be an entrepreneur. I needed the ability to find a career that the more input I put in, the more output came. And that is exactly what real estate has been. And like I said, it's not a low impact sport, but I definitely learned a lot about, I think skiing was the best business school I ever went to. I learned resiliency, accountability, and discipline, and that's what it takes.
You talked about growing up in skiing with your dad and growing up understanding what it meant to be in the development space, but not seeing that for yourself, at least the development side. Skiing you absolutely saw first. So,
Yeah,
but after that career, you kind of made that transition first in interior design. Sounds like you were working for an interior designer for an interior design company, and
correct.
realized that wasn't really going to work for you. That wasn't the fit. And you said something really that I really loved. You said you needed to be in an environment where the more you put in, the more you could get out. And as an athlete and as a competitor, that makes a lot of sense, right? We're kind of trained to understand that, hey,
Exactly.
here's what success takes. This is the work you need to put in order to achieve that. And in the business environment, that's what you were looking for. And I think it's frustrating to people who are in corporate America. And especially if you're in an environment that's, driven by politics or relationships, and someone's getting promoted just because they're someone's guy or someone's girl,
Oh,
and that can be extremely frustrating. I know that's what ultimately
yeah.
got me out of that space was
Absolutely.
playing. And I could play the game, but I just got to from like, you know
If
what,
you
y'all
don't have
like,
to,
you don't
don't
have
do
to,
it.
and it just didn't make sense. And for me, it was more, like I got to the point in corporate where, in order to make the next move up the ladder, I kind of need to make two moves laterally. And I was like, let me get this straight. I've been in marketing my entire career. You guys like me in this marketing space, but to get the next
Mm,
big marketing job, I've got to go do a sales job. What
yeah.
what logic does that?
Like, help me understand this.
But it's saying that was really when I said, what, I need to start mapping my exit. But
Yes.
you figured that out early on and said, okay, let me do something else.
And I
What
can't
was
take
that?
the credit. Yeah.
Well, tell me what was the moment, right, when you made that transition and you talked about really not seeing realtors and real estate agents in a positive light.
Yeah.
At what point did that change?
So I give all of the credit to a dear friend of mine who is now, I believe, top 1% of real estate agents in the country. Charlotte Durham. I sat down to dinner with her one night and I was kind of expressing my frustrations about just feeling that there wasn't really an opportunity for growth personally or professionally where I was. And she said, Athena, you love homes, you love people, you love design. You grew up like watching how homes are built. Real estate is the perfect fit for you. Like, what are you doing? And I still was a little bit resistant. Of course, I'm very hard headed, and it took some convincing. And she said, "Look, just sit down with the owner of my company." It was a small boutique brokerage in Denver. I literally had lunch with him the next day, and he's one of those people that just radiates like human sunshine. He he transformed within a lunch my view of real estate agents as something that was I couldn't be I mean, sure, in any industry there are great agents and there are people that aren't so wonderful. Like that you'll find that anywhere. Just like you said in corporate America. There are agents that really, are transactional and don't necessarily focus on relationship based business, but what he showed me was relationship based business and how you can find your why within real estate. And he transformed my view so profoundly that I quite literally the next day put in my notice at my job
Wow.
and said, this, it's not the right fit. You guys are wonderful. I learned so much. Thank you. And I really did. I mean, I now develop homes and the insight that I learned in interior design is absolutely invaluable. But I immediately started, I'm very much as an ex-professional athlete, I learned by coaching and by doing and by, I believe in mentorship. And John, the owner of the company, allowed me to follow him and I watched every move he made for about a year. And I mean, I went on showings with him. I did comparative market analysis with him. I listened in on his phone calls, open houses, you name it. I was doing it with him because I believe there are so many facets of real estate that you do not understand. And just by taking the exam, you have to have a really hands on approach. And for me, finding a mentor or a coach that can help guide you in your early years and throughout your career is probably one of the greatest gifts I've given myself personally. But John really gave me the opportunity to assist him with some of his clients so I could get while I was getting my own business off the ground, because it does, there's a misconception that anyone can sell a house. But when you start in real estate, you really have to put in a lot of hours and a lot of hard work before you start to see it pay off. And by assisting him, it helped me have a little bit of income. And he also taught me the very fundamentals of investing and of how to build long-term financial wellness that are I still use to this day. So thank you to those two.
I was going to say, kudos to Charlotte and John. Obviously, did a great
Yeah.
job of laying that foundation for you. And you clearly saw a spark in both of them that allowed you to follow their lead to the point where you could make that decision the next day, right? It was clear to
Mhm.
you that,
It
okay,
felt
I think
right.
the way I was looking at the business maybe wasn't ideal because you were looking at maybe what your father did. And maybe
Mhm.
from the outside, there were people who probably saw what he did as just fun and luxury, but you probably saw him at home at night and the calls he had to make and leaving. And it's like, nah, I don't want to do that. Um,
Exactly.
it's funny, little sidebars. I was at dinner with my son yesterday, and he was telling me he doesn't want to do what I do when he gets older. And I was really surprised because, like, oh,
Yeah.
you work hard. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, I cut my days off when you come home for the most part. Like,
I have
I've
the best
structured I've
job.
structured this to be very present and with you. And he still feels like, no, you work hard, it looks difficult, you're investing and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know how
It's
much
a
of this is
phase.
like, well, and he's young too. So he just
Yeah.
turned 11. So I'm like, I don't know how much of this is him being oblivious to the way the world really works, or like he really just is gonna like he thinks he's just gonna be a YouTuber, right? And just like
Right.
so I was like explaining like, you know how hard those YouTubers work? Like you gotta so anyway, we went in a long tangent, right? But a lot of this is just that normal pushback on our parents,
Yeah.
right? Like the things
Oh,
that they whatever it is
definitely.
you do, nah, that sucks. I don't want to do
Mhm.
that. But you found a way to invest in real estate and to get into real estate that was right for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. Let's talk about that more because when we talk about real estate, it could be broad, right? It could be in development, it could be in design, it could be as a realtor, it could be as an investor. And from an investing standpoint, that person, that buyer is certainly different than the person who's looking to buy their home. Can you talk to me about the difference between that real estate homeowner and that real estate investor who is looking to create a portfolio that can pay them over time?
Absolutely, and I'll also talk about how the 2 can merge, because that's where my story and my investment portfolio began. Was one of the first insights I got from my mentor, John, was buy a house, live in it for 2 years as your primary residence, and then move out, keep it as a rental, buy your next primary residence, live in it for 2 years, and I followed that model to a T, and I didn't even realize that I was creating a portfolio at a very young age, as much as I just was listening to what had worked for him. So that's something that I do coach my clients on, because by holding on to these beautiful homes or any property, you're especially, and knowing your market. Like Denver, we have a on the low side an average appreciation annually of about 10%. So I know that even if my cap rate is not, 7% or even 6% on a rental, that I am still owning a property that is appreciating at an incredible rate. I mean, where else can you put your money and get 10 to 20% in annual appreciation? So I try and kind of merge just the average homeowner, and helping equip them with the knowledge that homeownership can create long-term financial wellness. But the real estate investor is going to be coming from a much less emotional approach. And because when someone's purchasing a home, there is so much emotion and so much invested um, this is going to be where, potentially where I raise my family. Is what are the schools like? What is you're looking at it through a very different, more personal lens. Whereas an investor, you are coming in and looking for what is going to be the best income producing asset for me. And I think where a lot of people fall short is not looking at that from a multifaceted approach. We should be looking not only at, okay, what is the average vacancy rates and rental rates? What is my cap rate going to be? But what is the annual appreciation average in this neighborhood? Like, what can I expect this property to be worth in 10 years? And what is it going to take to maintain that? How much capital do I need to have on hand to keep this building in its highest and best use? So it becomes a much more numbers driven, less emotional and process. And I think there's a very, very important difference when I'm going in to meet with these specific types of clients, because if I come in trying to preach the emotional roller coaster that real estate can be and how I'm going to successfully guide them through it to an investor, it's probably going to fall on deaf ears. But if I can come from an approach where I have used all of the incredible resources that we have in our hands now. I mean, just even looking at using chat GPT for understanding vacancy rates and understanding cap rate. Like, we have all of the tools at our disposal in 2025 that we can come to the table and provide valuable real-time insight into how their investment is going to perform and what the realities and expectations that they should have are. Because buying a multifamily property, you really need to look at it from a long-term standpoint, because you do not want to get stuck all of a sudden 3 years down the line replacing, the entire HVAC system and not having budgeted for it. Like, there are a lot of expenses that you want to be aware of. And there's a huge amount of information that you need to understand prior to investing in a property. I mean, tenant landlord law in Colorado is one of the most difficult things to navigate that you could imagine. So, are you going to find a great property manager? Have you looked into property management? Like, what is the liability if you do not? So these are all questions that I aim towards my investor clients, and generally not towards as much towards my general homeowner.
Yeah, that homeowner's more concerned with getting the house that they can envision raising their family in or whatever, right? But that
Exactly.
investor, they're looking at the deals, right? They want to make a return
Yeah.
on their investment. And you hit on a couple of key things. And whether you are a newer investor or an experienced investor, I think it's important to replay a few of them. The thing that I took away from what you said was making sure you have the right team. That starts with that agent, that broker. Do they really understand the market? Can they help you understand the market, the sub market, the trends, the data, the figures? And you talked about the vacancy rates and all of those things. You want somebody who understands that. There
Yeah.
was a time a couple of years ago where, every broker was doing great and they didn't have to work very hard. They could just list a property and it was going to go under contract within, 72 hours if they wanted to.
Not
That
the
is
case
not the
anymore.
market today. Yeah, that's not the market. And,
No.
we're getting ready to list a property and we had to really have some deep conversations about what were we looking for in a broker. And we really want someone who is going to do just that, broker a deal. Again, there's a time where you could just list a property, you put it out there on MLS or whatever exchange you're using,
Mhm.
and you're likely going to find a pretty good buyer. I think today you need somebody who's going to be able to tell the story of that property, to be able to show a buyer where there's going to be opportunities for them to create value, to show a seller and kind of maintain that seller's expectations and get them on board with, hey, here's where you're going to have to be flexible. But you want someone who's actually going to help broker that transaction. Beyond the broker, you talked about who's going to manage it. Do you have a property manager? You want somebody who can help introduce you to people and help you establish your team. And then the
Yeah.
last thing you talked about was, and this is even something for me starting out, was like, it's easy to look at these spreadsheets and just look at income and expenses and your mortgage payment. But
Mhm.
what about the capital expense items, the HVAC systems, the windows, the roof, the things that you don't have to pay for today? But if you plan to hold this thing 10 years, you're going to have a reserve budget to
Yeah.
account for these items. And a lot of people, especially starting out, they don't do that. They just buy the property based on the current rents, the current expenses, and what their mortgage payment's going to be. And to the
Yeah.
point you made, you got to really forecast what you're going to need as an owner of this property over the next 5, 7, 10, whatever it is, years.
And then that comes also with, looking at homeowners insurance. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
the changes that have happened in that space, especially when it comes to multifamily and HOAs and what the requirements are now for capital reserves, what it's going to take to maintain actually being able to have an insurable building. I mean, that didn't used to be something that was as much of an issue. But I can't tell you how many times I have found properties now that are almost uninsurable,
Mm,
and understanding that, that's probably not something you want, but understanding that there are going to be maintenance expenses that are not just something you can put off, because if you start putting these things off, then eventually you're going to have issues with with getting homeowners insurance, or if your HOA, for example, if you implement a property manager that creates a formal HOA, if they're not creating the proper capital reserve funds for when there needs to be a new roof, and then you're definitely not going to be able to get insured. So there's so many facets that, exactly, you need a broker that is well versed in all of these items. And that, building your team, I always, like, as corny as it is, I always say teamwork makes the dream work. I couldn't do anything if it wasn't for having an amazing team, because we don't know what we don't know. And it is so important to recognize what you know and what you don't know, like what your specialty is, stay in your lane and build a team around you that can do the same. Like, find the best property manager, find the best general contractor for when things do go wrong that's going to work with your property manager. Find an incredible homeowners insurance broker that can ensure that you're getting the best possible rates annually. Like, there are so many pieces to the puzzle, but I believe that they all stem from, if you have a great real estate broker, they should have the resources to introduce you. And that's really important, is to interview multiple brokers, interview multiple lenders. I work with a couple incredible commercial lenders that will fund, anything over 5 units, and do a remarkable job. But it's that relationship is something I've built over the last decade, and is that, that decade of building relationship is invaluable, because I know that they're going to take incredible care of my clients. So understanding what your broker has accomplished, how many sales that are similar to what you're looking for that they have done, and how rooted in the community they are, so that they have those connections that they can help you with. I think building the team is the most critical piece.
And I think that's great for every investor, right? To your point, have the
Exactly.
team. You want brokers who can introduce you to the extended team. And
Yeah.
when you're building a team, I really think there's two people you should focus on, right? One is the broker, one is the property manager. And then you need to lean on those individuals for everybody else on the team, right? That broker
Yes.
knows who the best attorneys are. That broker knows who the best title company are. That property manager knows who the great contractors are. So you
And if
really
they
want to
don't, it's a red flag, guys.
it's a red flag. That's why you find the best of those two, right? And who recommends each other. And then from there, you can really build out your team. So it's a great way to get started. And then the other thing you said, which I think is really important, is being rooted in the community and understanding the local laws, because every market's different. And I know when I was starting out, this podcast was actually called Target Market Insights before. And the reason was I was trying to figure out how to find the best places to invest. I was in Chicago. My mentor lived in Cincinnati, but was investing in Texas. And everybody I talked to were in different markets. And I found what they were saying didn't work in my markets. The numbers didn't work. The rule of thumbs
Completely
didn't work.
different.
Completely. And the laws were very different. In
Oh,
Chicago, if you don't pay the interest on someone's security deposit, it is an automatic disqualification. So if someone didn't pay rent and I try to take them to court, but I didn't pay them literally at sometimes it could be a 10-cent interest
Yeah.
rate or 10-cent interest,
Yeah.
then I would lose. Not only do I lose, I
But
then
you're
have a penalty of like two
liable.
and a half. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
crazy, right? And if you don't understand these nuances in that market,
Oh,
it
you
could
will dig
really
a
hurt you.
hole.
So, and I know Denver's similar where they've got some weird landlord tenant
Oh my
laws, and then it's
goodness.
the submarkets of Denver based on the neighborhood. So, talk to me just a little bit more about the importance of having people on your team that understand those local laws and ordinances.
Oh my goodness. So, yes, I mean, every single year there are so many changes to local law. And that means, both statewide and each district has
Mm,
differences. And if you do not have especially like the property manager, I mean, it's extremely messy, and especially in the state of Colorado, they do not want real estate agents in any way practicing property management. I mean, it is almost to the point where they want you to get in trouble because they do not want the two of them mixing.
mm,
So it is so critical to find a property manager who is taking, all of the continuing education classes, sitting on boards within the counties and building departments, and understanding exactly what the legislature and how it's changing every year. Because if you, like you said, there can be one adjustment to a law. And if you don't know about it, then you are then liable for a huge sum of money. I mean, the laws in Colorado favor the tenant so heavily that, I mean, if you don't have a window screen in one of your units, that can be cause for basically the your tenant not having to pay you. I
wow.
mean, and if a tenant, looks in a little bit to tenant landlord law, they can really find out ways to take advantage of it and to not get evicted and end up living in a property for free for like a year. So these are things that, unless you have someone that is extremely knowledgeable and extremely like continuing to obtain knowledge, then you're going to get yourself into a huge financial hole that was probably not part of your investment portfolio
Yeah,
scenario.
yeah.
So it just puts that much more importance on building the right team. And unfortunately, there aren't a ton of great property management companies. There's a lot of kind of so, making sure that you're doing your due diligence there is one, and doing your due diligence on the building itself, which is something your broker should be guiding you through. But you want to know when should I expect the roof to need to be replaced? When should I expect the HVAC system to be replaced? How old are the windows? If I'm not repainting and carpeting in between each tenant, I can get sued in the state of Colorado. Like, you have to understand what all of the expenses are going to be, and how you can kind of predict what is going to be coming up to ensure that that is part of your investment, plan. Because if you're not setting aside those funds, you'll be in trouble. If you are setting aside those funds, you're setting yourself up for success, and you're going to have a really great long-term financial asset. But you have to set yourself up for success, and I think that comes with a great team.
Athena, I appreciate you sharing that. It's very helpful for everyone to understand just how important it is. You're talking specifically to Denver, but again, I experienced that stuff in Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm in Ohio and right on the border of Ohio and Kentucky, and the laws are very different between those two states as well. So, this is one of the things you don't want to play around with. Make sure whoever you're working with, you're surrounding yourself with people who are very knowledgeable of the local laws and also continuing to stay on top of the ever changing landscape and the legislature that's getting introduced that feels like all the time. So
Mm,
make sure you're staying on top of that. Athena, before we go to our round of insights, you've overcome
yeah.
a lot in your life. Just talk about the role resiliency has played for your mindset and your ability to find success.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we all face adversity in life in a variety of ways, whether it's a hard divorce or losing a job. Especially the last 3 years have been extremely difficult for a huge number of people. And when we look back in our lives, I think when you're in the midst of adversity, for me, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease about 9 years ago. And I went from being a, high performing, like one of the best athletes in the world at my sport, to barely being able to get out of bed and being told that I should probably go on disability and quit working and just kind of rot away, honestly, is how I took it. And this is something I still battle every single day, because Lyme disease pretty much attacks your entire body, and it attacks whatever you're genetically predisposed to. So my body does not feel good ever. And the amount of resilience that I didn't even know I was learning as an athlete has really been the key thing in what's kept me going. But when you look back at your life, and you look back at the most challenging times in your life, it's never it's never the easy times that you say, wow, I learned so much about myself, or I grew so much as a person. It's in the mud, it's in the most difficult, challenging times of our lives, in the face of when we're facing adversity, that we really find out what we're made of and who we are. So I think if we can all approach adversity at least with the lens of, okay, it's okay to be, mourn and be pissed off about whatever's going on in your life. But it's so important to understand that you can't let yourself sit in that mud, because if you do, it's going to suck you down, and it's going to continue to just make, you're not going to find that growth. So for me, it definitely, I had a lot of anger and sadness, and in why did I lose my health? I felt like I lost my, control over my body. But what I didn't realize at the time early on was that this was teaching me lessons about myself and my own abilities that I never would have learned had I not gotten sick. And while I wouldn't wish this on anyone, I truly believe it's formed me into the person that I am, and that I want to be. And real estate has been my why. And I think when you're facing adversity, if you don't have something that can keep your eyes looking ahead, keep your head up, and that at least gets you out of bed in the morning. For me, real estate was my why. I get to work with people that I care about deeply, and I get to help them build financial wellness for long term. And that has been what's gotten me out of bed on my worst days possible. So finding your why and understanding that adversity is what brings growth in your life will help help you get through the most difficult times, which again, a lot of people are facing right now. So keep your head up, guys. We can do this.
Athena, I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing about your journey with Lyme disease and giving some advice to
Of
others as
course.
well. Like whatever you're going through, having that focus is going to make it a little bit easier. It gives you a sense of purpose, at
Yeah.
least. Doesn't change the struggle, but
Yeah, it
at
still
least it gives you
sucks.
some focus of what you're doing. I appreciate that. If you want to connect with Athena or learn more, you can check her out at Athena Brownson, realtor.com. We're going to put a link to that in the show notes. Right now, we're going to transition to our round of insights. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Athena, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Getting diagnosed with Lyme disease.
All right. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for our listeners.
I love looking at the U-Haul statistics of where people are moving. Like that is the best resource I've found for finding what markets people are moving to and from, and that can help you invest wisely and something no one ever looks at.
Love it. Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
As it might sound corny, but one of my favorites is Sell It Like Sirhan, Ryan Sirhan from Million Dollar Listings book. The insights are invaluable, and it really, whenever I feel unmotivated, I listen to it, and it completely triggers a spark within me.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
I'm a huge believer in habits. So creating a morning and an evening routine that are, 10, 15 minutes each is going to completely change the way your day is. So ensuring that you're doing writing out your goals and affirmations and doing a little bit of reading, maybe meditating, listening to binaural beats, whatever it works for you. Find those activities that can begin and end your day and stick to them, because I guarantee you will notice a shift in all aspects of your life if you do this.
What's your number one insight for building resiliency?
That's a great question. Number one insight for building resiliency, it's finding something that you're passionate about that is going to keep you moving forward. Because if you don't have something that you're excited to get out of bed about in the morning, you're not going to build resilience. So finding, and it could be what points out in your life that you need to get rid of because it doesn't make you excited to keep going. So finding your why.
All right, you are in the Denver market, so we're going to go in a different direction. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
If I like to treat myself, I would say Tavernetta is the most amazing Italian restaurant. Go sit at the bar. You don't need to sit at a fancy table. Go sit at the bar. The bartenders are incredible, and you can get the full menu. It's right by Union Station, which is a must-see as well. So if you're visiting Denver, check out Union Station and Tavernetta. You'll love it.
Tavernetta it is. Mm-hmm. Lots of great stuff, Athena. Really enjoyed hearing your story, growing up in a ski town, being a skier yourself, doing that professionally, watching your dad kind of as a luxury developer and a skier himself, and then ultimately getting into real estate, first as an interior designer, then ultimately as a realtor, and just sharing how important it is to have mentors, but to have clarity and focus in your why and working with folks who really understand what you're trying to achieve. If you are an investor, you want agents and brokers who understand your goals as an investor, who know the market, know what occupancy should be, can help you recognize what your CapEx budget should be, and really can help you build out your team. So lots of great insights for all of our listeners. And the thing I definitely want to make sure we talk about is just making sure you understand the local laws, like people get caught up all the time when they're not familiar with what's going on and they're surprised that you couldn't do something there. So make sure your team understands what exactly you can or should be doing in that market. Again, if you want to connect with Athena, let me say it again. Again, if you want to connect with Athena, you can check her out at AthenaBrownsonRealtor.com. Athena, thanks again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day. I appreciate you so much.